Okay.
Yep.
So here's the neck that we roughed out on the bandsaw last time.
Yep.
So all I've done is taper that off a little bit from the bandsaw cut.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's time to rough it out a little bit more, which is very easily done. We're not getting to the finished neck shape here, we're just knocking it back a bit.
Right.
And then we'll let it settle. And then so that's where the dovetail is going to be, in that section. So this is the approximation of the heel cap.
Right.
So the other way you can do this is with various rasps, and there's an amazing rasp that not everybody turns their nose up at, called a surform.
Called a what, sorry?
It's called a surform.
Surform?
Yeah. It's basically just a fancy rasp. But and then we'll turn it around. And we'll start up the other end.
Wow. So do you have a format for the necks? Do you have like a template, or do you just hand shape every one until it feels right?
There's a set width,
Right.
to the overall neck,
Yep.
which on your guitar is going to be 44 millimeters at the nut.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a set depth, unless you ask me for something different.
Sure.
And I'm going to go to 20. This is including the fingerboard.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be 21 millimeters here,
Mm-hmm.
deepening to 23 millimeters there.
Right. So 21 millimeters at the nut, 23 millimeters.
That's the
right. Yeah. Okay.
of about the 10th.
Right.
And obviously the neck is flaring out
Mm-hmm.
from my 44 here. It'll be 44 here, and it'll be 54 at the 12th fret.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's always a flare.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need more room here than you do there.
Yes, of course.
So it's a tapered thing. And you can make that taper anything you want.
Hmm.
That's personal taste, but I've kind of evolved the neck to a point where nobody mentions it when they play my guitar.
Okay.
They just go, oh, this is great,
Right.
right?
And away they go.
In the 40 odd years ago, people would play my guitars and pick them up and they go, oh, the neck's too skinny. Or the next person would come and say, oh, the neck's too fat.
Right.
Or then I gradually honed it to this position here, and people stopped making any comment on it at all.
Okay.
They just go, hey, this guitar plays great. So I think, right,
That'll do.
That's the dimension that everybody thinks is okay.
Right. Yep.
Nobody notices it. So it's a little bit, 44 is 1 millimeter wider than your average, acoustic dreadnought neck width. And I've just settled on it. And then people will ask for different from that. For instance, this one here hanging up, the whole plan of the fingerboard, and the strings is 2 millimeters wider.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
This is a 46.
Right.
Which I quite like, and it's good for fingerstyle.
Right.
But the 44 does all of the styles best.
Okay.
You know, everybody says I can do everything on that. I
Right.
can do fingerstyle, I can do chordal work, I can do, you know, I can do finger picking, and I can do flat plectrum work. So it just suits them all. It's a really good all-round, you know, size. So at the moment, this is still oversized.
Right.
It's wider than the fingerboard will be,
Okay.
and it's slightly deeper. But I'm just, you know, knocking it back. Every time you take a piece of material off a stick of wood, it is likely to deviate slightly as you're relieving the stresses that the tree has grown up with inside it. So if you took a plank of wood and split it down the middle
Yep.
into two pieces, highly likely one piece would bend this way and one piece would bend that way.
Right. Yeah.
We'll do the same with a piece of metal because there are stresses inside a piece of metal.
Right.
But we're dealing with wood and it's natural, so it's going to go all sorts of ways. And this is the other nice little rasp I've used a lot.
Been looking at that.
Which
That's
is
nice.
it's like a set of hacksaw blades.
Oh right.
It's a really clever idea.
Oh, very cool.
This is so it's not quite as coarse as this one. As you were asking about the neck shaping template, so I also then have these little guides. So these little arches. When I've got the guitar neck on the guitar, I'll be using these to
Right.
check that is going to be the curvature at the 12th, at the first fret, or and at the 9th fret. So
Right.
that one's bigger than that one.
Yep.
And these are just little things that I then have moulded off a neck that I particularly
Oh,
like.
okay. Right. Wow.
So I just go, and it's a reference. Somebody might say, "Oh no, I want mine more D-shaped,"
Right.
or "I want mine more V-shaped." But most people like a C-shaped neck,
Yep.
and that suits most people for most styles.
Right.
It's kind of, you know, it's a Gibson-shaped neck, a good old C, and it suits everybody for everything, and that's why Gibson did it, I think. You know, these old, experienced companies kind of dreamed up these dimensions and shapes because they listened to the players.
Right.
So it's so I'm just letting the stresses out.
Right.
So it's been cooked, this neck, you know, it's been kept in a very warm, dry environment to make it as stable as possible. This piece of mahogany was probably imported into Europe in 1980,
Oh wow.
so it's been around a while. And you know, it was straight when I first started cutting that, but I'll make sure in a couple of days that that's not decided to go wobble.
Right. Sure.
So it's neck making is a process, a slow process. So remove some, let it settle, true it up, remove a bit more, and when we put the fingerboard on, it'll be doing other things. You let it settle and
Right.
you true it up a bit more, and finally you can shoot the surface of the fingerboard straight and tick the frets in when you think it stopped moving around.
Right.
So that's okay if you do it the long way round like I do. If you're trying to make a neck in an afternoon in a guitar factory, that's why you get a bit of a wobble going on, I think. They're
Okay.
just doing it so fast. So you could argue I'm cheating.
Wow. Kind of feel like just rasp. It kind of feels nice.
Oh, I can leave it like that for you if you like.
Ah, it's lovely. Wow. It's a beautiful piece of wood.
It is, it's nice, good piece of wood. Ooh, it's the highest grade Brazilian mahogany you could ever buy. It's kind of, the grain's going straight up and down. Some people refer to it as aircraft quality wood, which is, going back to the days of biplanes and wooden struts in
Oh wow,
timber
okay.
wings. You wanted those pieces of timber to be the grain line running right away through the strut, otherwise
Right.
it's going to snap.
Yes, of course.
So it's that quality of timber. So if you look at your average antique dining room mahogany table, you can see the grain is swirling all over the place.
Yeah.
That's not what you build a guitar neck out of.
No.
It's sort of the guitar, you try to make it as straight up and down as possible. You're more likely to get a stable instrument out of it. But still being wood, it can still wander.
Yeah, sure.
But,
Awesome.
So,
Oh man,
so anyway, here
it's
we
a
are.
new day. Look at this.
Right,
Blink and neck.
here's a guitar.
Oh my goodness.
There's some bindings on, which I don't know how the light is.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is it?
Wow.
So you can see all this sticky stuff.
Yeah.
This is all the tape that has been used to hold them in place. See this super brown sticky tape.
Right. Okay.
That's what you're doing to hold it in place while it's drying
Okay.
overnight. So the next day, which was yesterday, I peeled all these off. If you leave them on, they get stickier and stickier and you can't get them off at all.
Wow.
So that is,
Oh, that's beautiful. So, what's this stuff made of?
right, the white material is holly.
Oh wow.
This is what's it? There's a slice of holly. There's a slice of holly. English holly tree. And then my kind wood supplier slices them up, slices it up. Apparently it's a difficult material to deal with. If you have to cut it while it's still wet and
Right.
dry it quickly. Otherwise it goes grey
Oh wow.
and horrible. But it's the whitest wood there is. And it's got a lovely close grain.
Right.
So the whiteness gives it this great contrast with the rosewood.
Yeah. Right.
And being very closed grain pattern on it, it doesn't fill up with black sawdust when you're sanding down
Oh, okay.
that's one of the reasons I like it. And I also like it just because it's not like, you could put a maple or a sycamore along there,
Right.
which wouldn't be quite as white. And then you can introduce flame and everything like that, but you spend hours trying to get the rosewood dust out of the maple
Yeah.
pores,
Right.
you
Okay.
know. So and when you look at this holly material closely under microscope conditions, when it's polished up, it's got a lovely little fleck in it,
Right.
which is not too far away from the fleck that you get in a piece of ivory.
Oh wow.
But you won't see that until it's got the finish on it.
And then inside that we've got the same.
Well, these little strips here are, where are some of those? They're little bits we call purflings, and I'm buying them as a black and white ready-made strip,
Right.
and that'll be maple or sycamore in the middle of it. And this bunch here have got a black fiberboard outside, which makes it easier to bend.
Right.
And sometimes they'll arrive and they'll be dyed black sycamore as the black, but they are not so. You can sometimes they'll fracture and split more easily. So
Right.
I tend to go for the fiberboard ones. And all I've done there on your edge is give you a pair of them. So you've got a pair of those on the edge.
Oh wow. Okay.
You can see they stop and start at the bottom all here,
Right.
and then they go up and join.
Oh, it's hard to see that. Where is it? There it is, just there.
There
Okay.
it is, yes, you'll see it quite clearly.
Yeah.
Should do. So yeah, and that's what I've done is I've rebaited the corner of the instrument. So where are we with something like this to demonstrate? These are they're cut back. I cut them back with a router.
Right.
So I haven't subjected you to hours and hours of the screaming router. But if you
That's a really delicate job, though, right?
it is, yeah, you've got to really concentrate on
Yeah.
it. Because if you go, it's just got to be just right. Otherwise, these won't fit.
Sure.
And everything needs to be adjusted for the different batch of these things that sometimes, I buy them supposed to be 1.5, but these ones are probably 1.35 millimeters wide.
Right.
Or sometimes they're 1.7.
Yeah, okay.
Every time you buy a bunch of them,
They're different.
slightly different.
Right.
And I used to get really upset about them being different.
Ah.
But one learns to accept and just go, well, that's the way it is. So if you look at this as a rebate that I've cut on here, this is what I'm doing.
I see.
I'm putting those on there, and I'm putting those on there.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that's how it's done. And they're all glued on slightly proud, and then they're scraped flush afterwards,
Right.
which is what I've half done on this guitar, because I've done it at this end here so that I could cut the dovetail. So where is the scraper? It is a scraper. This is the Magic Cabinet Maker's scraper. I don't want this on it, all the sleeves are going to get in the way. So this is how you scrape back bindings.
Oh wow.
And the white edge is the binding, then it's the purfling inside.
Right.
So it's easy for people to get confused as to which bit's which. And let's do a bit more on the top edge here. Where are we? So anybody who's not used to woodworking will wonder what this slice of metal is that I'm using and how's it doing this. It's a piece of fairly hard steel. And I've noticed that I keep rotating it in my hand.
Right.
So it's got 4 cutting edges on it. And all I'm doing is, I think it's time for a diagram. Right, here's me lump of steel. Right,
Mm-hmm.
in cross section. Okay, like that.
Right.
Well, first of all, I need to clean up the surface. When it gets blunt, I put it on a file that's just one of these single cut files rather than a double cut file.
Right, okay, yep.
And that smooths that bottom edge off nice and clean. Then I get this metal burnishing thing, which in my case is an old screwdriver that happens to be just the right hardness to match the hardness of that.
Right.
You can buy a correct tool, but this particular scraper works particularly well with this old screwdriver. So first of all, I'm making a burr on the edge. So I'm doing that.
To get rid of the burr.
That's creating a burr that way.
Oh, okay.
So that's created a burr like that. Right, by me doing that.
Yes.
Now then I turn that edge up and I'm pushing that burr over. So I'm making it go now. Like that.
Oh, okay.
So I'm doing that. Did I do it on that edge? Let's do it on this edge now.
So is the goal to get rid of it?
Well, the goal is to end up with a scraper that has got burrs on all four corners.
Oh,
like
wow.
That. And that is the cutting edge. You see, so then that, if I've done it correctly, of course, which, being a demonstration, I won't have done it very well. Because it wasn't as good at that. And you keep turning it round and you find some bits are sharper than others.
Oh, wow.
It gradually blunts itself. And then you start again. And you use this for this sort of process. You use it for smoothing the timber.
Right.
It's a better.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It's partly like you could use it as a sandpaper.
Right.
When you're doing the rubbing down, the final prep before whatever finish you're going to do, you'll be doing that with the scraper and with sanding blocks.
Right.
I think this would be silicon carbide or something like that.
Right.
So a bit of this and a bit of this gets you to your finish that's smooth.
Wow.
So it's pulled back to the edges. Now that will have made a very sharp edge.
Right.
When you're playing the guitar,
Yeah, yeah.
last thing you want. I've seen so many people's guitars made with razor sharp edges.
Right.
You sit down on your knee and you go, why didn't he round the edges off? But I'm not going to do that yet because at the moment those edges can be there as protection, really.
Sure.
And when I'm doing the final sanding down,
We'll do it then.
I'll round those all off.
Right.
But you see, if you look at this guitar here, this is done in a more fancy way.
Right.
And the binding here is flame koa against rosewood. Difficult stuff to get hold of like that.
Uh-huh.
I've never ever, I built this guitar a good 10 years ago.
Right.
I've never found anything as nice as that. And then, down the bottom you can do that.
Oh, wow, okay.
And you make all these little purfling lines, mitre join at the edges.
Oh, my goodness.
And it takes hours and hours.
That's
and
amazing.
You must have seen, other guitars with the shell inlay going all the way around the edge here, all the way around the edge here, all the way around the edge here, all the way around the edge there. And it's nice if you like that sort of thing.
Right.
But I prefer them. This is as fancy as I ever make a guitar, this one.
Right.
That piece of wood, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, it's stunning.
So I'd sooner build another guitar than spend the
days,
same time
trying to make it
decorating
pretty.
one guitar.
Yeah.
It's and then we get to the next bit of the guitar.
All right.
Which is the neck.
Look at that.
Which someone once referred to it when I was writing that book on how to build an acoustic guitar, the editors came along and they wanted to know what the handle was made out of. So that's the guitar neck. So this is a dovetail joint, okay?
Right.
I don't know whether you can see that well in the light.
Yep.
This is a tapered dovetail joint. And this is the traditional way the acoustic guitar and the neck are put together. Well, I suppose that actually is the second most traditional way of doing it. The Spanish that invented the thing in the first place did it without a join, which I guess I'd have to draw you another picture of that. They make the neck and that top block, that's this bit, as an integral unit,
right,
and then cut a slot in the sides, slot in the neck to put the sides in.
Oh, okay, right,
So
got
it's
it.
completely through. It's a through neck style design.
Right.
The Americans invented this. So, and I guess they invented it really because I think this could go off to one part of the factory.
Oh,
and this could go off
interesting.
to the other, and then they'd be reassembled at the end. But for the steel string acoustic guitar, this is the tradition, the original tradition. So you can see that's not in there fully.
Yeah.
I've made the jig on purpose that it's not all the way home.
Right.
And you can also see that this tapered dovetail join, as you put it in, it self-clamps.
Right,
That's the beauty of it. But what is most important with an acoustic guitar is where it's pitched to in relation to the body, especially to this point of the body where the bridge is.
Right.
So you've got to, using the centre line of your neck, you've got to make sure it is pointing along the centre line of the guitar.
Right.
And then the other thing that's equally, or if not more important, is that
Angle.
pitch, the angle to the body. Is that here or here?
Right.
And that's so as I gradually let that into the body, I've got to make sure that line, the projection of that surface, is where I want it pointing.
Right.
In this position here.
Right.
And I want it to be tilted back just a little bit, that out, so that the line at the top of that neck is giving me a gap here.
Right.
And this is a sophisticated piece of equipment that I use for that. This is not an old one, but it'll do for the purposes of illustration. So I stick that on there, and I'm aiming for that as I'm letting it in.
Okay.
Because I want that to be about a 2.5 millimetre gap when I've got it all smoothed in. So I can do a bit of work on this for you. So when this came out of the last bit of the process, you saw that was straight, a straight line here. So what I want to do is to make it more elegant. If you look at this one here, you can, I don't know whether that's good enough light to see that isn't a straight line.
Yeah,
It's a curved line. It just makes it look more elegant. So I've got to shape that down to look more like that.
Okay.
And put a heel cap on it.
Right.
Before it gets glued up. So I'll do this just by eye, really. And every maker will have a different idea of what
Right.
that shape ought to be. You know,
Oh, wow.
sometimes it can be pointed, sometimes it can be flat. You know, it can be. The idea here, what I'm trying to do, is here's the body of the guitar with the dovetail. And then the neck of the guitar is going to fit in here. But it's, in order for it to snugly fit, you need to cut that bit back a little bit. I'm doing this exaggeratedly, and that bit. So I'm cutting that in there and that in there, so that then there's a gap here and here. Okay, and then the edges of the neck are going to be sat snug against the sides of the body.
Oh, okay.
If it was flush to flush, you'd have a real job getting that to be
tight against
against it.
Interesting.
And I'm quite happy to just be having the surface that's gluing and touching to be that bit from there to there.
Yeah.
There's also going to be a gap at the back and an air gap there, and then it will clamp itself tight.
Right.
So what I've done so far is that little bit of my
Okay.
So here we are. This is what we've got. So far I've just removed that bit of that.
Right.
The next thing I'm going to do is remove that bit.
Okay.
So I might need to do this with the magnifying goggles. The light is so dim in here. You'll be pleased to hear I went to the opticians last Friday
Okay.
and handed over a ridiculous amount of money for a set of varifocals, which I'm hoping I get on with. And of course the guitar's slightly curved, the body of the thing's curved, so he's got to allow for that as well. So it's all, the whole, the guitar's not straight. There's not a 90-degree angle anywhere in the guitar.
Right.
Which makes the construction of it fascinating. Because if you're building a box or a wardrobe, everything's
right angles
and squares, and you make the drawers so that they go in upside down, if they're good fit, which to me it fills me with horror to do something like that. So the point of contact is going to be, let's not get it all penciled up. See this surface here?
Yep.
That's where it's actually going to touch the side of the guitar.
Oh, okay.
And then this is going to be
that's where the
gluing surface there.
Yep.
So we go back over the other side, and you'll see against the body here, you'll see what we're trying to achieve. You can see those gaps. Can you? Is that good enough light?
Yeah. Perfect.
So you'll see a little gap here, which is what you're looking for. Then it's got a chance of fitting snugly.
Right.
And in order to make the thing, and at the moment I've got the centre line in line with this body centre line nicely. But I want to pitch the neck down like this a bit more.
Right.
So then that's a matter of taking material off these two surfaces until I get the correct angle. So that you spend the rest of the morning
getting that done.
Doing that. It's flat. So I'm going to skim off about 0.5 millimetre off there.
Right. So eventually, as the angle gets perfected, and it just gets deeper and deeper into the guitar until it's flush with the body.
Well then when I've got my angle, I go, okay, I know I've got my angle right, but I'm still sort of 8 millimetres out. I then get this tool here. It's hardly a tool, is it? A sanding block, and I'm making sure these are all flush. Those ones, which I haven't cleaned them up yet.
Right.
But basically, I remove material from the cheeks of here.
Right.
And here. And all this is a standing stick with this coarse grade sandpaper on it.
Yeah.
That's good enough to just keep doing that and that and this. Although I kind of did that first bit of cutting with the knife, I'll be finessing that.
Yes, of course.
With a block of sandpaper and gradually go on a little bit more off here. Okay, a little bit more. I just wanted to take a big bite off to get a bit nearer.
Sure.
And eventually, you sink it in until it's flush with the surface. Then
at the right angle.
Then at the right angle. Then I'll shape the outside of that a bit more. Cut the heel back, because at the moment the heel is deeper than the body of the guitar.
Yes.
It's oversized, so that gets cut back. Put a heel cap on it, and then glue it up overnight.
So this is our truss rod.
So this is. The guitar hasn't got its truss rod installed yet, or the neck hasn't. So this is all a truss. This is the traditional compression type truss rod that again Gibson and Fender have been using for I'm not quite sure how many decades.
Right.
Ages. And it's an adjustable rod rather than a non-adjustable, let's put some metal in it, or just to make it stable, which was the other way of doing it. Let's put a box section of mild steel in it, or a T section of mild steel, non-adjustable, just make it stronger. So this is the compression style, and it needs an anchor, and this is the anchor piece, which is basically a 10mm brass rod. Have I got any of that lying around? So this is what you start with.
Oh my goodness, you made that.
Yeah, and then this is mild steel, and I use 5mm. Everything's metric in this country now.
Right.
So
sorry, it's just dawning on me that you actually make the truss rod.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
All you do is cut a bit of mild steel to length.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tap and a die.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember which one's which. This one does this bit.
Yep.
It just, you rotate it and it cuts the thread.
Mm-hmm.
And this one here cuts the thread on the inside.
Right.
So all I'm drilling is an appropriate sized hole that goes in. Well, it's obviously in a vise.
Yep.
And it cuts by hand a thread. So it's as easy as that. And then on the, you notice I've threaded a short end and put more thread on this end.
Okay.
I've taken a little
Yep.
scoop out of there, because that goes in here. And then I whack that over. I tighten that really tight.
Yep.
And then bash that over.
Oh, okay.
Give it a big bird end.
Right, yep.
Then it can't come undone.
Yep. Nice.
And then another bit of brass. Cut a slightly oversized hole.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably 5.2mm hole. Then it's nice sloppy fit on a 5mm rod. And then I buy this bit. This is the truss rod nut. So
Okay.
it comes with an M5 thread
Right.
from Europe somewhere. And it's got a, so that's got a,
Oh, okay. Yep.
which is either called a hex thing or an Allen thing. It was
Yep.
when we were kids. That goes on there. That goes on here. And so that's set with plenty of, halfway down that thread. So it's got room, if it wanted to use the rest of that thread. So this is anchored in this end, and this is anchored in that end. And it's as simple as that. It's set into the neck, so I have to route the trench,
Right.
stick it in, and then stick a fillet of maple on top of the trench. So another diagram coming up.
How deep into the neck does it go?
Right, well, that is the critical bit of these, and it either makes it work or not work.
Right.
So here's my neck without, at the moment it's oversized, isn't it? It's a roughly shaped thing. I know how much it's going to be finished, and when it gets finished I know it's going to be something like this. And I know what that dimension is going to be from there to there.
Right.
So I'm routing a hole that is a channel. And then my rod is sitting in the bottom of there. And then I stick a fillet of maple on top of there.
Right.
That's glued in. And this is sat inside a cushion of that silicone bathroom sealer stuff
Oh, okay.
to stop it rattling around.
Right. Wow.
And this dimension here, from here to here, the bottom of the neck,
Mm-hmm.
needs to be about 3mm.
Is that all it is?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
If the and then the fingerboard's obviously going on top of there.
Yep.
So inside of you, if your neck has a rod sat right in the middle of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's basically compressing it because we're squeezing it from this end and this end,
Mm-hmm.
it isn't going to do anything.
No.
It's just going to
No,
squash
no.
the middle.
Right.
It has to be squashing
An
the
edge.
back edge
Yep.
for it to give the deviation. It'll make the neck bend, and it's as simple as
Because there's tension there's tension here, right, from the strings.
yeah.
and
The
that's pulling
the strings are trying to pull it like that, aren't they?
Yep.
It's basically, yes. The strings are making it pull up like that.
Yep. Yep.
And this rod is countering that,
Right.
and it wants to pull the neck to a reverse bow, I suppose you'd call it.
Right.
And it's a bit, I don't know whether it'll work on this, but if you squash this in the middle,
It's just compressed.
it'll just compress.
Yep.
But if you squash this on the outside, it'll bend. If I compress it here, you can see it kind
Yes.
of does this bending
Yes, of
motion.
course. Yep.
And that's how it works. And I favour the single action rod because there's the smallest amount of metal
Right.
in the neck.
Right.
And I figure that it's the wood that gives it the tone.
Sure.
So let's have as much wood as possible.
Whoa! Check that out. Wow. That's amazing. And the truss rod is in.
The truss rod is in there, and what I'll do in a second, I'll just put this bit back in here.
That is
What we will do is
unreal.
unclamp
Look at that.
And, I'll plane that fillet off for you.
Wow.
Planes sharp enough.
Oh, mate, that's so cool.
So, here's your guitar with the truss rod fillet gluing in.
So that fillet actually goes up into the, past the neck and into the body as well.
Yeah, because it's the way I locate a truss rod is it bears on that block, the top block.
Right.
Because I've always felt that, and it gets a better yank, as to put it. I suppose it's got more purchase on it
Okay.
if it starts from here rather than starts from here.
Right.
You
Interesting.
know, so, and if I build them with an integral neck, top block, that's the neck's going all the way through underneath here.
Right.
Then it will start here,
Right.
and so you've got the rod working on the whole neck. I think it's got an even better chance of putting things, you know, to where they ought to be. Being Mr. Improviser, that I think when I first bought one of these, I think there was one.
Right,
So it's just
okay.
like, what piece of metal is going to belong to it? And it's just a matter of trying every round piece of steel that you got until you found the bit that worked on your bit of metal. It'll be all down to the hardnesses of the two pieces. You can't make a guitar without a scraper. Because all the wood's finished with a scraper at the end.
Yes.
And you kind of want to see it nice and neat fitting, not like with a couple of bits of cardboard poking out and filling it up. It's what you find on some brands of guitar,
Right.
which is quite amusing. You pull across a 50s guitar and go, oh, I see, that's the brand of cigarettes they smoked in those days. So that is now being full of wood shavings, which I promise I'll do them out before the end. So now we have that neck poking on with the centre line that matches the centre line of the guitar,
Right.
and a little gap up here that it projects over. So it's pitched back slightly to the right amount. So the next thing is a fingerboard.
Yay! That's just so cool.
So and there's your, I don't know, before
Oh,
you
wow,
were
yeah,
last
no.
here, this wasn't
No, it wasn't on.
this wasn't shaped, was it?
No.
So it's shaped here, but not here. Largely, really, that's just because you can't do a lot of shaping once the thing's glued on
Yes.
to the body.
Yes.
So you go, well, that's that line there is permanent, but these lines here I'll shape and shave till it gets to the right shape. So that's finished bar a final sanding. So because it's difficult to anywhere difficult to get at, you have to do it before you join the next bit on, so to
Right.
speak. But, so that's it. Do you want to take it away like this?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. Do you mind? Oh, wow.
This is the hand saw cut jig for cutting your fret slots. So this piece of plastic material
So the fret slots are cut before the
thing goes on.
thing goes on. Okay.
And some kind man in America makes these, and these will be, cut out on a computer guided machine,
Right.
and they're giving me various scale lengths. Like on this side here, this is lined up for a Fender 225.5 inch scale.
Right.
On this side, they're lined up for a 625, which could be one of the Gibson scales.
Okay.
Gibson used an awful lot of 4 3/4 inch scale lengths over the years. It's never probably ever, I don't know whether it's ever been exactly 4 3/4, but if you measure a lot of old Gibsons, you'll see the scale length moves by probably 1/8 of an inch.
Wow.
3 or 4 millimeters. So there's no such thing, I don't think, as a definitive one, but that's one that I would use.
Right.
As if someone said, I want a Gibson scale length, I'd use that. This template here has got the Martin long scale on this side, 25.4 inches, and on the other side here it will have the Martin short scale, 24.9. So I generally use the 25.4 as my long scale.
Right.
And this fingerboard is stuck onto that template,
Oh, wow.
and this little prodder sits in this little hole here, and as we go up it, we clamp it all down with these little gadgets, and we stick the saw in here and make a saw cut, and this stops it going too deep
Right.
because it meets the
It's the edge of the saw.
bezel of whatever it's called of the saw. Every time you make a saw cut, you
move it
it
along.
up one, and then you move it up one, up one, up one, up one. You can see all the sawdust it makes. Up, 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 and there, I've got the numbers written on the side of the thing. Tell me where to stop. I go, right, okay, there's 20, which is how many frets we're having, and that's the last cut.
Right.
In the old days, before this was invented,
Mm-hmm.
I used to do it like this, which might be of interest. So this did a similar job, so that but just when the fingerboard was glued on the guitar,
Oh, my
I
goodness.
would clamp that on and just
Steady,
go
steady.
go from one to the next, and that slot would stop the fingerboard, the saw going
Right.
too deep into
Oh, my
it.
goodness. That's amazing.
So I made those by hand, and I made one for every scale length I wanted.
So this is stuck down on here.
This is stuck down, which I'm going to peel off for you now.
Okay.
Here's where the zero fret lines up.
Oh, I
And
see.
it just happens
I
to be-
see.
It happens to be a distance away. See the marking, the little pin that locates
Yep.
where the zero fret is.
Yes.
Happens to be, I think it's about 3 1/4 inches away from here.
Right.
So you just have to go, hang on a minute, from there to here. There's me zero.
Right.
And these little things here hold it together and stop it shifting. But while the saw's doing its work.
Yeah.
But to hold it in place, it's double-sided sticky tape.
Oh, wow.
That just, so it's just a bit of
Oh,
stuff.
that's fantastic.
So there's the fingerboard made,
Amazing.
and I'll finesse those slots a bit. Check them out. Make sure they're exactly the right width for the fret wire. And at the moment, that fretboard is 2mm wider than it needs to be. So if you look at this template here, here's the template that is actual size. I cut those slots with it just a bit wider because the saw has a habit of on some pieces of wood of chipping out at the edges.
Off the edge.
So in order to get around the chip out problem, I saw cut it and then I'll just plane it.
When it's on the guitar?
No, before it goes on the guitar.
Okay.
I'll finesse these slot depths, just check they're all the right width. I'll probably get one of these little Japanese saws,
so cool,
which are rather sweet, and I'll just go over these and it'll probably just enlarge it by a smidgen.
A technical term.
Until it's just the right size for the fret wire that I'm using.
Right.
So.
And what fret wire are we using?
I would suggest that is a question that I was going to ask you, or maybe not ask you.
No, don't ask me. Whatever you use is perfect.
The wire that I've been using on all of these guitars, unless someone asks me anything different, is a Dutch-made wire that's 2mm wide.
Just use whatever you use is perfect.
Whereas this one here, I put on a Stumac wire. I don't know its number, but it's 2.4 times 1.2.
Right.
It's a bit more jumbo-ish.
Yeah, I don't want that.
And I could show you another one that I put the 6105 on.
No, I just want whatever you use.
I've just kind of, I like experimenting with guitars that are kind of not for someone. So we can lay that on top of the guitar.
I'd like you to meet someone very special.
Yes, so that is going to go on here. And what I quite often do to make sure that I don't mess things up and stick it on in the right place as I go 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, etc., etc. So I don't mess up which one is the 14th fret and line it up incorrectly. So you can see it's the neck. It's still oversized a little bit. Look, there's a little chip there. See that little chip out there?
Oh wow!
So we don't want that. So I'll trim.
Don't want that.
I'll trim that off after I've finished sorting out the slots, and then when I've got it into its position, I'll calculate the exact. I'll cut it off like that with a nice curve at the end, like that. Which will cover up.
Yes.
It'll come to about there.
With the nut. Yeah. So the nut will go in here. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the zero. That's the nut end position. Will butt onto that.
And does the nut go? Do you cut it off here, or does?
Yeah. I cut that fingerboard
straight down.
Off. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know whether you can see that on here.
Oh, okay.
So the nut butts right up at the end of the fingerboard.
Okay.
And the nut, I start then the angle of the headstock at that point there. That's where this line ends up.
Yeah, okay.
So there's a tiny little, then I cut the nut into the head veneer. So there's a tiny fillet of rosewood sitting on there.
That's amazing. Okay.
And that little detail changes from one manufacturer to another.
Right.
You'll probably see Martin, and the bottom of the nut is angled downhill.
Right, okay.
And that's the way they've done it most of the time.
Right.
Though I have noticed quite a lot of recent models that have it as a square bottom.
Oh, wow, okay.
But I've always just done it as a right angle because it's actually easier to make the thing.
Yeah, sure.
The Martin beveled, bangled one, trying to get that angle correct by hand when you have to replace one, you go, not quite the right angle. And you've got to have a tall nut blank to include it. So it'll get stuck on flat. And when it's, as in with no camber, no radius,
Okay.
and then I will put the radius on it
Right.
prior to fretting.
So this will be stuck on almost like as is.
Yes,
and
almost
then
as is. I'll trim
and then
it.
you'll shape the.
I'll shape the camber,
Right.
or the radius as everybody in America calls it. So that's going to have a 10-inch. I mean, people call it a 10-inch radius, but it's a camber,
Right.
I think, with a radius of an arc from a circle
Sure.
that would be 10
10 inches. Okay.
But anyway, so it's a 10-inch, and then it'll flatten out right up the top here to a 14.
Right.
So it'll be
Okay.
about 12 here,
Yes.
because that'll give you the most comfortable playing action,
Right. Okay.
because the string spacing is tighter here than it is here.
Right.
So it's a conical fingerboard.
Conical fingerboard, that's what I was looking
the term
for.
we all use. So if you think of the because the fact that the strings are flaring, the best surface underneath that is the surface of a cone.
Yes.
Tiny little bit of a cone. And again, that's something that I took off a Gibson.
Right.
And I don't know whether it was, something they've always done, Gibson, or whether it was just a very particular guitar that had been worked on, and I really like the comfort of this. Let's go 10 to 12.